Today we have, especially in the Western America, we have a different type of crisis. And those are, which I see, that religious extremism has joined hands, and excuse me for the words using religious extremism, but I think it's a fact. Religious extremism has joined hands with ethnic or sort of tribal nationalism in America and in the West. As Karen Armstrong has remarked, that nationalism is far productive than religions is an inspiration of terrorism, but when nationalism is combined with religious zealots, threatens the world peace. It is painful to say that today ethnic nationalism, supported by some religious right-wing conservatives, is asserting in the West and even in our country as well. This assertion is not only against migrants, but also all minorities, including the role of women, issues of gender and intersexuality. This is what really, when I look into the West, and I have visited few countries before that, and when I look deeply into my country, it's very painful for me. A person who came from one chaos doesn't want to see another chaos or a painful life where life is threatened. This assertion has led to sharp divisions in the West and the US, the extreme right and the extreme left. And that's something else that we see that the middle, is no more there. Is either one extreme or another extreme. Hateful rhetoric is becoming a norm in our country, and also we see it in the West. Today, minorities are not safe, human rights are violated, and violence is increasing. And what to come next? And I'm afraid, because hate is very dangerous. World history tells us when hate prevails, the devil dances, and I'm using a religious terminology here. The devil dances when hate prevails and violence takes over. The crisis in the Middle East, part of Africa, is of a different nature. Violence and terrorism there mostly stem from political instability, economic disequilibrium, and social disenchantment that trigger violence. There also, tribal leaders have joined hands with disgruntled religious elements to fill the vacuum. Terrorism in the Middle East, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and others are byproduct of political instability in the region, economic disparity, and the interference of the West in the already devastating situation. And I actually, personally, my study shows that the West is equally responsible for the creation of Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and ISIS. Religions have positive values. Positive life-affirming values like mercy, compassion, love, and peace, but also contain elements of negativism like rejection, hate, and religious extremism. But religions alone, and this is my thinking, cannot be considered as sole responsible for our present world crisis, both in the West and as well as in the East. What we can do as academics in this situation? Liberal arts education came out of the Renaissance and Reformation movement. And I don't want to go on the history of that, how liberal arts education became as a consequence of, and what were the prevailing situation at that time. In the West, that paved the way for Renaissance and Reformation movement, and finally liberal arts education came out of that. The goal of the liberal arts education was to teach and train the next generation to foster intellectual curiosity, democratic thinking, civic behavior, and respectful dialogue. Liberal arts education did its best to meet its goal in its early period, but then gradually more attention, and this is my thinking, gradually more attention has been given to scientific and technological education, and liberal arts education either ignored or reduced. In other words, things were reduced there. In other words, was ignored to catch up with modernity. In other words, liberal arts education was not the attention the way it was paid to science and technology. That attention was not paid. If I see the history, if you look into that, that is not being paid to the liberal arts education. It would have been essential for liberal arts education to have made, that's what I'm thinking, religious and multi-faith education as hallmark of liberal arts education, which did not happen. And what happened? Liberal arts education, left the religious studies, religious education to the places of worship and seminaries. And you can see even in our country, state universities do not teach at all religious studies and interfaith studies. And you can see that there is no religious studies department in the state universities and colleges, especially I see that in New York. So anyway, it was left to the places of worship and to the seminaries, not going out of dogmatic teaching. If it would have become integral part of the liberal arts education, meaning the next generation would have been more open as they would take science, other social studies, whether political science, economics, in other words, other social sciences, they would have taken religious studies in that way. So we see that what is happening in our country, what is happening in the West, and then you can go and see in the East what is happening there. Viewing the contemporary situation, interfaith education was felt essential to be integral part to liberal arts education to counter the prevailing hateful rhetoric and promote civic behavior through etiquettes of respectful dialogue. But so far, very few universities and colleges have taken positive steps in that area. As I said, today we emphasize on science and technology education, but we are ignoring the very foundation of a civic society. We are not only ignoring, but even removing the existing liberal arts education from our curriculum. I'm sorry to say that, how the liberal arts education is treated in many colleges, and some don't have at all liberal arts education, or very few courses, because they want their graduates to graduate as early as possible, so more emphasis on science and technology, and that way, and very few courses that could be taken in liberal arts. So we are building a huge castle of science and technology on weak foundations. Any infrastructure erected on weak foundations may collapse very fast. And I see the current crisis, and that from that perspective, what is happening in our country and to the rest of the world. My plea to you is that we as academics need to re-look to our liberal arts education and how to devise ways and means to strengthen the very foundation of a civic society in its contemporary context. But it's quite hard also to see. It's a hard thing to do because colleges, universities need students' enrollment to be financially stable. And that's why you can see small colleges are suffering. not having adequate, especially liberal arts colleges are losing enrollment because students enrolled in reputed institutions of modern science and technology as jobs with better salaries are mostly in tech and medical education. Institutions with emphasis on liberal arts education are declining in enrollment and are even struggling for its survival. We must reverse this. This is how we can do that. Certainly some of our academics are here, or you all may be involved one way or another way into this academic work. How to be reversed? We need to re-emphasize the need for a better liberal arts education along with science and technology education. Once I was invited by a technology, Institute of Technology, having some issues there. And I said something, and I want to repeat those things before you. I said to them that you are preparing machines to manufacture, but people are not machines. People are social beings. Therefore, when you prepare good students for future professional work, at the same time you need to strengthen their social behavior to be good civic citizens along being good professionals. May God bless all of us to do this work. None of us want to see our country divided the way it is getting divided, or the rest of the world. We all work for peace and how peace can happen. I really appreciate your presence here. Thank you very much. Have a good stay.